Hi, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. I hope you all are ready to learn how to make lots of money with differential privacy. Just like that's just the clickbait title to get everybody back in the room. What I'm hoping to cover today is a breakdown of some visualizations that I prepared over the course of a 3-year differential privacy project for the Department of Energy that helped convince stakeholders of the notoriously difficult to convince stakeholders of technology of differential privacy. Cover some quick background on the project, break down 3 of the major visualizations, and then wrap up with some design principles to take away. Quick note about me, I've been coming to PEPR since 2020. At that time, I was running this project, the Energy Data Vault for the DOE. Since then, I've run a software engineering team at a self-driving car company, and then most recently, like a lot of people in tech these days, doing AI engineering. Okay, so how did this differential privacy project start? The DOE approached a startup that I was running security for at the time with a funding proposal to develop next-generation anonymization methods for energy data. And like you do at a startup, you say yes, and then you figure it out later. Part of figuring out later was finding out the wide variety of use cases that we would have to support with this technology. And that's what led us to differential privacy, because it's a principled way to support a large range of statistical products. We were not the first to think of using differential privacy for these data. Indeed, a panel of experts presented differential privacy to the CPUC, the governing body for this sort of data in California, and they were completely rejected, basically outright. You might be wondering who these experts were. They were none other than the Turing Prize-winning inventor of differential privacy, Dr. Cynthia DeWerck, supported by a director from the EFF, as well as a cadre of UC Berkeley professors. I mean, an illustrious group of experts. What they cite as the big barrier to adoption were a litany of non-technical issues. This is where, as a startup, we felt that we could succeed where they had had trouble, because these sorts of things are what startups are quite well positioned to do, right? Building MVPs, building relationships with customers. We had existing relationships with a lot of the individuals in this space from our product work, and so we took a cut at it. And to spoil the surprise, we did manage to get the CPUC on board over the course of that 3-year project. We did 2 major data releases with quite respectable epsilon values. So central to that communication strategy to overcome those non-technical issues were visualizations. As the tech lead of the project, I prepared all of these, so be nice about my graphic design, but we'll break them down. So the visualization that convinced funders, very early visualization that won us the contract. This was not it. This is a slide that, if you've encountered differential privacy in the wild, you may have seen before, right? It's the mathematical definition of differential privacy. While central to differential privacy projects, it's not very convincing, right? My experience was that stakeholders would see this, they take at face value that it worked, that the privacy protections were strong, but how does it affect me? It seems kind of complicated. Can you actually do real things with it? Okay, so to answer that question, before we'd even won any funding, I built a 1-page interactive that walked end to end with a real use case. And if I have been, the demo gods are, oh yeah, it works. A little live demo. This is all open source. It's made with synthetic data, which allowed us to share it widely at that early stage of the project. I don't have time to go into too much detail here, but it allowed our stakeholders to walk through a real use case with differential privacy, slice and dice data in a way that they were used to, explore the accuracy privacy trade-off, little Laplace mechanism visualization there, and then actually see an output, a statistical output with noise added to it, to like start that conversation right away about what it meant to do statistics with noise. There's probably not any building energy scientists in the room here, but this quantity here is like very, very interesting to building energy scientists. So the fact that they got to see it was not something they were typically used to seeing, and brought them on board. Okay, let's see if I can get the slides going again. Yes. So that's what unlocked that initial tranche of funding, was that visualization. And the design principle, in my mind, to take away from that is to aim to be domain specific rather than general purpose with presenting differential privacy. Right? The allure of that technology is that it can be used for anything, but when it comes to convincing stakeholders, you need to speak their language and try to go, get all the way into the details of a real use case. Okay, another major stakeholder in this project were the regulators. And our challenge with regulators was to convince them that existing anonymization methods in the sector were insufficient to extend to the new use cases that they were interested in supporting, and in such a way that failure would be catastrophic. They weren't just sort of slightly bad, but they would fail completely. We needed to demonstrate this, right, to overcome the difficulty of adopting something as complicated as differential privacy. So the way that I went about this was walking them through a threat scenario, which I'll do with you all here today. So imagine you're trying to understand the energy use patterns of a geographic area. You've got a bunch of commercial buildings in this geographic area which use a small amount of energy, and one big cement factory which uses a lot of energy. The question you want to know is how much average energy is used each day of the week, which you present in a figure like this. The existing regulation in this sector is the 15 by 15 rule. So an aggregation is considered anonymous if it has at least 15 participants, and no single one of those participants represents more than 15% of the total of the aggregation. I picked the numbers in the previous slide to fit the 15 by 15 rule when you prepare this figure. So the question is, if you know that the cement factory only operates one day out of the week, which day of the week is it? It's not a trick question. It's really easy to tell which day of the week it is. And not only that, but you can back out the actual energy consumption of that factory pretty easily because you have a baseline the other days of the week. That's a catastrophic failure in this space. That's exactly what anonymization is meant to protect for these data. The big reveal of this scenario is that it's not just a thought experiment. Data in California follow this distribution. It's pretty easy to find census blocks where you can create aggregation, these 15 by 15 aggregations where you can isolate a single individual. That argument was pretty convincing to regulators. By the end of the project, we were getting feedback from them like, we don't want to talk about the future of anonymization of energy data unless it includes differential privacy. Okay, so that pulls sort of design principle number 2 from there, which is the idea to describe specific threats with real numbers to the extent that you can. I mean, it's hard work. It can be tempting to just talk about the theoretical weaknesses of anonymization, but it's really worth it to try to illustrate something concrete when you're trying to bring people on board. Okay, last visualization, the one that convinced data scientists. I mean, data scientists are absolutely crucial in a differential privacy project. They're your end users. They're the ones that know what's interesting to do with the data. Fortunately for us in this project, when I had to convince Adam and Steven to prepare our first data release, differential privacy offered them access to new data that they otherwise wouldn't have had access to. So in that way, it was fairly straightforward because I could show them load shapes. So another thing that building energy scientists, are there any building energy scientists in the room? You see this sort of thing and like, oh, wait, we never get to share those widely. You can see the error bars on them from differential privacy. Not only were we able to bring data scientists on board by showing them what was possible, we were able to build that collaboration and dig a little deeper. Let me put it this way. What's really great about bringing data scientists on board is that they're very well positioned to help you find statistical questions that are amenable to differential privacy, that are less sensitive to the contribution of individuals. So when we wanted to go from these global views of energy use to sector-specific breakdowns, we had to reframe the question because the load shapes would have error bars that were too big. So we reframed it in such a way that we could answer the interesting scientific questions with histograms, which are much more amenable to differential privacy. Sensitivity is 1 for a histogram. You have to zoom way into those figures to see the error bars added from the noise. Walking along that road further, you realize that the goals of statistics and the goals of differential privacy are in many cases fundamentally aligned. So this is one of the original professors, Dr. Moritz Hart, that was part of the first effort for CPUC and differential privacy. He explains it this way, that our goal is to learn about populations as a whole and not specific individuals, whether we're doing statistics or whether we're doing privacy work. If you can get your data, if you can like reach that place with your data scientists, it's a really exciting place to be because you're on the same team at that point. A bit pithy of a way to pull it together in design principle, but that win-win framing, if you can get there, is a really great place to be with a differential privacy project. I just got the stop message on my last slide. Great. So pulling them all together into one slide, here they are. And just as a final sort of food for thought, this project finished a couple of years ago, but I find myself going back to it again and again because these sort of ideas I think apply more broadly than just differential privacy. And I threw together a couple of examples of ways that I applied them in projects since then on this slide. So hopefully that's been thought-provoking. Happy to answer questions now and afterward. Thanks.